say Israel is one of our biggest allies. I mean, is there any truth to that? Nope.
I mean, I think if a nation was an ally, it would not like hold us hostage with massive levels of compromise. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So like Whitney Webb's book, which is great. It's the same publisher as my book, Trying Day, right? She did volume 2 was on Epstein and Maxwell. And I mentioned like some of this stuff early on in my first book with like Hollywood cults and sex cults and how that ties into like compromising people, getting them into, get them to the party, R. Kelly's after party, that kind of stuff. Right.
Let's get into that.
But I mean, I don't think that if they were an ally, they would act that way, and they wouldn't be so intent on so many operatives and so many people, trying to ensure that there's not even criticism. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they say Epstein was a Mossad agent. Well, that's what I heard.
Well, the first and second chapter of her book go into the significant evidence that he was working for that entity as well as FBI and CIA. So he was actually probably working for a lot of people all at once.
Including the United States.
Yep. He, of course, makes a appearance right away in Whitney Webb's book in volume 2, and she notes that his dad was OSS, right, Barr Senior. So we have from the very beginning the connections to the intelligence agencies, and this I think applies to Epstein as well, right? We have Epstein being basically an owner of multiple passports. We have people from Acosta says years ago, I was told not to touch this guy, he's intelligence. That plays a huge factor in this, I'm sure, right?
Yes. And
when we go back to his background, I think this is really crucial because I did an interview with a friend of mine who's a Cold War historian buff, and he went deep into even getting into like the KGB archives in terms of some of the colonels in the KGB files and information that they had on Epstein that was only recently translated into English. And what's interesting is that even the KGB knew that Maxwell Senior, Robert, was this sort of odd international, mega cutout, you could say, for British intelligence, it seems like, as well as other intelligence agencies, Mossad as well. So there's sort of like this higher level game that sort of plays above the dialectic of East and the West and the Cold War. And I want to ask you the question, do you think that probably what happened here was that you had, Maxwell and Ghislaine sort of running this operation that he had sort of perfected in the Cold War, and then they recruited Jeffrey into being kind of the newer, updated version of the same blackmail operation?
That's an entirely plausible scenario. Ari Ben Menashe says that Maxwell hooked Epstein up with because he thought that they would be sweethearts together, and then ultimately that Ghislaine was inundated with Israeli intelligence or Mossad. And not only that, we have Alexander Acosta. Well, Alexander Acosta, as you said, was told, he was a U.S. attorney for Southern Florida, and he was told to stand down on Epstein because Epstein was intelligence. Now, if you look at how our government functions, there's only 2 people in our government that can tell a U.S. attorney to stand down. I went to a number of legal scholars, and I talked to them about this. There's 2 people, the attorney general and the president. And the attorney general at that time was Alberto Gonzales, and the president was George Bush, too. So, and Alberto Gonzales, as an attorney general, he's not going to cover up a nationwide pedophile network unless his boss tells him to. I mean, he's not going to preemptively do that. And his boss obviously told him to. So in 2007, you saw the Bush administration just completely quash this. And then every administration after that has continued to cover it up. And when Epstein was arrested the second time at Teterboro Airport in 2019, and this is where we started getting into problems with the Trump cover story. The FBI opened up his safe the next day, and they took out a lot of discs. And and according to Business Insider, they took out hard drives too.
Yeah, that's those pictures we've seen where they're carrying out, right, these stacks, and you've got these CD-ROMs, right?
And the New York Times reported that there were hundreds, possibly thousands of images of child abuse material. So when that strange memo came out last week that no one signed, no one was willing to sign, I did agree with some of the things. I do believe that there were over 300 gigabytes of child abuse material taken out of Epstein's safe. But here's the thing. Bondi was going to release the quote unquote Epstein files or Epstein list. It was on her desk. And then she released a nothing sandwich. And I do get a kick out of it. I released more incriminating information on Epstein in 2015 than she released in 2025. Right. The Black Book, I saw a copy of the Black Book that was released and everybody's name was redacted.
Yeah, I remember finding a couple of years ago, and it must have been the one that, and I think it was from that Mother Jones thing, because it has to be the one that you originally had put up, and it had all the names still there and the numbers still there. So when everybody saw this, it was like, what the hell is this? You know, this folder psyop photo shoot that they did a year ago, a few months ago. This you know, these prepackaged binders that they gave out, that was so ridiculous.
With the influencers, and
yeah,
you'll notice that none of those influencers have screamed for any kind of truth since then. I guess they know where their bread is buttered. But Bondi, her first lie was that she wanted us to believe that the FBI and whatever dark, malignant corner of intelligence deploys people like Epstein hadn't looked at that stuff that had been taken out of Epstein's safe. I mean, that they had to look at it all. They've been looking at they were looking at it the day they took it out. They were looking at it. They probably didn't even sleep because there were a number of people that were looking at it. So that is a complete fabrication on her part. And then she said, well, I was bamboozled by the FBI. And so that either shows that she's lying or inept. I mean, depending upon how you want to look at it. And I would kind of lean towards inept. She kind of reminds me of a Stepford attorney general. Anyway, so with her, and then she got herself into deeper water when she said, I will redact, the only thing that will be redacted is things that could have a bearing on national security. Now she has to explain to us what a bunch of child molesters have with national security. So she kept on digging herself deeper and deeper and deeper. And then the memo came out, that strange memo. And I do agree that there was over 300 gigabytes of child abuse material taken out of Epstein's closet. And I do agree that there were over 1,000 Epstein victims. I agree with those things. I adamantly disagree that Jeffrey Epstein molested all those girls by himself. And I adamantly disagree that Jeffrey Epstein wasn't involved in blackmail. And the Trump administration put a white elephant in the living room by saying that they were going to release the files and how profuse those files were. And then they decided to kill the white elephant. But the problem is, the white elephant might be dead, but it's still in the living room.